It's been a while, but I am back. I haven't been filming any YouTube stuff. I actually think when I looked on YouTube was about 4 or 5 months ago. I've been posting on Instagram and been pretty busy content-wise there, but I've let the longer form stuff I just put it to the back, to be honest, because I've been busy working and just haven't prioritized it. But it's something I really enjoyed doing like 5 months ago, especially event prep, just day-to-day stuff that I do, business-wise, things that I'm doing well on, things that I'm struggling on. I just like documenting my journey. One, for me to look back on, but also to inspire other people and give a bit of an insight. So what I wanted to go through today was a little bit of a Q&A about myself, so you get to know me a little bit more, and some of the craziness I get up to, and a little bit on some of the things I've been asked recently on Instagram, and I can run through a few useful tips to help anybody that's running, strength training, moving, fitness, you name it. We're going to go through a few different pieces. But one of the first things that I want to go through was how did I get into running, and kind of what keeps me going. Because initially when you first start any running journey, or say that somebody's got themselves booked into a London Marathon, for example, never run before, that can sometimes be somebody's first stepping stone into running. And something really important to note for myself, when I first started running, I think when I first did my first 5K, about 3K into it, I was absolutely blowing and gassed. I don't know if anyone remembers it, the old Nike running app. I used to use that before I even went on Strava. And I remember first 2K into the run, literally just stopped, gassed, nothing left. My heart rate was probably screaming. I just had an Apple Watch at the time. I didn't probably track or understand anything about zones, data, easy running. It was just absolutely conk it and smash it as hard as I can. And that's what I remember from my first run. It was uphill as well. And looking back on that, like over 6 years ago now, I believe it is, I'm like, the difference from there to where I am now, running the marathons, done the half Ironmans, got the 5K times that I wanted to, and the half marathon times that I got last year, at least this year. I've progressed a lot from that point, and it's really important, one, for me to look back on, but also to share some insights from my own experience that can help some other people, I hope, anyway. So if you're somebody coming into kind of your first, let's say, marathon this year, because we're coming into marathon season, there's lots of talking around London Marathon as always, which I went and watched last year. It was an incredible event. What I would say is be super patient. Running takes time. It's not a case of it's just a cardio activity where you go and burn your lungs for a good 42.2 miles. There is an art to it. There is a technique to it, and there's multiple things to build up. If I was new to running and I did want to prepare for my first marathon, what I would look at is probably running 3 times per week. I'd start off with an easy run. I'd have maybe a midweek steady state, building into a tempo, in some intervals, into speed work, depending on the specific workout you're going to do, or that's on your plan. And then I'd go for a longer run at the weekend. And then each week what I would do is progress that by 10% on my weekly volume in terms of mileage, whether in Ks or miles, whatever you take the pick on. And then every 4 to 5 weeks, what I personally like to do is have a deload week where I would just pull back the volume of my training. I keep the frequency of the 3 sessions and I add in a little bit more cross training. Something that I see a lot is when maybe a new runner comes in, or you may have done quite a lot of sport before, to be honest, you go into your running plan and you go straight to like 4, 5, 6 times per week, which is so much volume and load that if you can recover at a really high rate and you're not too prone to injuries, yeah, you may be able to recover between those and be okay with it. For the majority of people, you really want to start with 2, 3 runs per week, and then you can build up. Maybe if you were going for a time after a few months that you've built a bit of experience up, you can then build to maybe 4 times a week and add in some cross training. So I'd really absolutely push at that. You don't want to overdo it and just burn the candle at both ends. As much as it's super fun, the adrenaline rush that you get, the endorphins that you get from it, you really don't want to be injured, because anyone that's been injured running, you know it's an absolute shit show. It's horrible. So what I would say is build up progressively, make sure you're structuring your deload weeks, and make sure you're prioritizing your recovery as well as your sessions. And there's not like a specific session that's going to make you run your 5K faster. It's an absolute build up over weeks and months of preparation and going through different training phases. So how did I get into running and what keeps me going personally? So obviously going back to where I was, I set that first run about 6 years ago in terms of like 5K. I used to do a bit of track stuff like 100 to 200 meters when I was like a younger teenager. now built into the 5K. And like everybody's sole purpose when they first start running, for me it was like, right, I want to run a 5K sub 20. Like ego was screaming, that's all I wanted to do. And I remember getting down to, I think it was like 21:59. A road, it's literally 10 minutes away from me. I used to go on a Friday with an old friend of mine. We'd absolutely smash it week on week and just keep trying to get faster. I'd try PB my 5K every week. And like at the start of anything, it's newbie gains, so you just get quicker each time. And then I just kind of slowly plateaued. And that's when I started to take a bit of more of a look at structure into my training. And then I was like, right, if I want to actually run sub 20, I'm going to have some periodization and structure and not train like a So I pretty much had I think it was an 8-week block I'd done. I started with easy run, that interval run through the midweek. I think I went 5x1K. I did like a 12x400 and then just other types of interval speed work. And then I was just doing park runs on the weekend. That was literally all I was doing, to be honest. And then I got the sub 20 and I was like, oh, this stuff actually works. Like it does make a difference when you've got a periodized plan and you stick and follow to it. And then kind of from there, I've just gone from 5K, 10K, half marathons, and then through different people I've met, I've gone into triathlon. A good friend of mine, Jamie, and Ali now, that are very good triathletes. I like to do a good bit of training with them, and they kind of pushed me on a little bit. And then I ended up going into a couple of half Ironmans and like sprint triathlons, which I'm still got a lot to work on, a lot to improve on, the same as the running for those, which were good. And since then I've done 3 marathons. Yeah, 3 marathons I think it is, and plan to do another one this year, but I've got a bit of focus on triathlon. So my process and journey from a runner was lung screaming from running that 2K right at the start on that Nike Run app to now being able to go through different phases of training, years of experience with it, gone through the injuries, gone through the plateaus, gone through not getting better, and come out the other end of it. And in terms of what keeps me going now, some days I do not want to train, I can be completely honest. I don't have the enjoyment sometimes. But what I look at is if I could just tick a box, that's going to be a better option than doing 100% of the session. If I can only get 90% of the session done or 80% because I'm either a bit fatigued or I've overdone it that week, then I'll look to just pull back and scale it back. I'm a lot more aware of my body now. And as long as I'm consistent with it, I don't need to have the best weeks or the perfect sessions. When I do have those sessions, it's great. And it's normally on the days that I think they're not going to be good, they are good. So it's just about ticking the box and making it a low barrier to entry for yourself. That's probably what I'd say. My biggest challenge I've faced while running and on my running journey, I'd say injuries. I've always had a little bit of a niggle on my left hip going into my glute, well, hip flexor. It's something that's always been pretty tight. And I used to, like as I do now, I still do my strength work, but I wasn't as structured in terms of like mobility work pre warm up and prep as in the gym. I think a lot of the time it's so easy when you get busier or things come in and work gets busier or you're trying to sort more things out, you neglect the smaller things, but they make a big difference. So your warm ups that I do kind of in the gym, on my runs, they slowly start to slack back. And I've always had a bit of a niggle through the hip. So there was a point where I had quite a strain through my glute, which was a lot harder. I couldn't really train. I kind of just went to a lot of swimming, which come from obviously, luckily, being able to learn to swim and do triathlon. I could still get some sessions in. But I'd say for anybody and myself, my biggest challenge has definitely been injuries and navigating past those. So I think a lot of people have struggled with that as well. That's something that I struggle with as well. So thirdly, why did I become a coach? I think for me, it all starts with a passion with health, fitness and training, like a lot of people. And then something I realized I was good at was being, I would say, quite approachable with people, being able to talk to them, understand them, have a good communication with each individual I met. And I think being able to take someone from where they're at and leave them in a better place was like fascinating to me. And for me, seeing somebody maybe be quite plateaued with their training or have a struggle, and then you get that message through, or I've dropped that bit of weight that I just couldn't shift, or I've PB'd that time by 2 minutes, or I'm actually enjoying training and mentally I feel in a better headspace. For me, that's why I do it. It's that enjoyment and feedback I get from others. And it kind of, I think I'm doing it 3.5 years for myself. I was coaching before an employed role, but the last 3.5 years, starting my own business, it's been a bit of a whirlwind. There's been some incredible wins, days of struggle, days where you're like, what's the point of this? And you feel like you're struggling in your own head. But over these 3.5 years doing it for myself, I say, I've just grown loads as a coach. And one thing I do pride myself on, to be fair, I invest a lot of my time, energy and money back into education and courses, because you never know enough. There's always something to learn. So yeah, I think me becoming a coach was to leave people in a better place. I knew my own struggles. I was plateaued, I was stuck, wasn't progressing. So that kind of inspired me to help other people when I saw the transformation myself. So a few questions that I've got that I'm going to run through as well, that kind of link into what we've been going through. So it's a little bit of a mix up of this first video, but we're back, and long something goes out, we're going to be happy with it. So first one, what's one common mistake most runners make and how can they fix it? And I think a lot of the time, as I've said previously, when you're coming into a program, you go hard way too soon, and you need to have a building block. Like for anybody that comes into me, they have a week 0, a testing week, and then the first 4 to 5 weeks, we're just building a base. We're getting some familiarity with your training, the movement patterns from a running and strength conditioning point of view, and it's almost easy, fun and engaging for that first base. There's nothing too intense straight away. We're just looking to slowly build mileage up, build a bit of load and tolerance through the body with specific strength work, and then we can build the intensity from that point. We go accumulation, intensity, peak for the event, taper down, all that fun stuff. And I think a lot of the time when people go too hard too soon, that's when the injuries come, that's when the unenjoyment comes. And I think every run needs to be fast. It doesn't. You can pull back, like, especially for beginners at the start, like 80%, it should just be building your base. Like, I love the 80-20 rule. It can be different if somebody's elite, but that's very different when you come across those types of athletes. They're very advanced, but for majority of the beginners coming to running or intermediate, you want a huge base. That's what you're working off, your aerobic base. So 80% of your run's easy, 20% a little bit of sprinkle of speed work, the fun sessions, the harder sessions, and you build up through that. Because the truth is, the easy runs, they're going to build your endurance. Obviously, the hard runs will be a bit more speed and power, depending on the type of sessions you're doing. But yeah, if you're someone that's maybe stuck, not progressing, or you're really struggling, just go back to basics, build your base back up, sprinkle in a few of the speed sessions, few interval sessions, and then just take your time and relax. There's no rush. You've got time to become a better runner. It's not a case of, right, I've only got 12 weeks till my next race. I need to, obviously you want to do it the best you can, but there shouldn't be a complete rush where you're checking loads of volume and overdo it and then the enjoyment goes. It's important to just believe in the process over a longer period and not like, right, I'm going to just fall off a cliff and not run after 6 months. Like, you're still hopefully going to run for years to come. So take your time, build up sensibly, and also earn the right to run at that speed. It does take time. So if I could give runners one piece of advice, what would it be? Similar to what I just said. Be patient and be in it for the long run. It's like anything. If the first time you cook a meal, the meal is probably not going to taste that great. You're not just going to rock up and cook something and be the next Gordon Ramsay. It takes time to build stuff up. It's the same with training, running, same with business. It takes time to build to where you want to go. There's going to be setbacks, wins, failures, like, you're going to learn a lot. But what I would say is just trust the process, be patient, and I always say with running, find a group of people. Like, I love training. I did a session yesterday with a friend, Nath. To be honest, I wasn't feeling too great. I've been a bit under the weather this week. And we did like an 8x400s on a hill session. It was shit, to be honest. Struggled, but I felt so much better after. And you look back to, right, where was I a year ago? The pace I was running on maybe that style of hill session, and it's better. So trust the process and let yourself build and be patient. As I say, there's no shortcuts. Improvement takes a good amount of time. So I appreciate you all listening. For those that have clicked on the video, I know it's been a while. Next week I'm just going to try and run through a bit of what I do behind the scenes, training, my business, and not just things that go well, the struggles as well, because I think it's really important to add that in. So I'm going to be trying to add more value, and next week I'm going to run through more of these things. So I hope to add a little bit of value. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and share the video if you can. Catch you in the next one.